Welcome to Travel Tales with Debika. We're going to talk about astronomy. It is something I don't know very much about, but we're going to delve into it about the galaxies, the stars, and the solar eclipse, especially the solar eclipse. It is going to be a very interesting subject. I have someone here. He's my colleague, Kevin. And Kevin is into photography and he is a big fan of the solar system. Hi, Kevin. How are you?
I'm doing good, Debika. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. So I want to ask you, Kevin, since at what age have you been interested in the solar system?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess since I realized that I was in the solar system, I don't know, maybe I was probably 10, 10-ish, maybe younger.
Was there anybody who influenced your thoughts or your passion, or is it just something that came within you?
You know, I don't know what started it, but I do know that what what like made it more interesting to me was when I would go outside with my dad, and I'd be out there, and then we'd look up at the sky and we'd talk about the stars and stuff, and then that's when I just kept getting more and more interested. And then I'd find something out, and then the next time I would go out there with him, I'd tell him something else I found out about it, and then that's
Can
how
you
it.
explain a little bit about the solar system, the solar eclipse especially? Because I've experienced two of them, but if anybody asked me from a from a to explain how it works, I wouldn't be able to.
Well, I'm no expert, but uh, it's basically when the moon passes directly in front of the sun, and it causes a shadow to fall on the earth, and it's usually a certain area, not that wide, that it causes a perfect shadow where the moon perfectly covers the sun, and that's called the total solar eclipse. And it's a well, I've only seen it once, just recently, so it's a crazy experience.
Can you tell me more about your experience, how you felt, um, starting from when you came and decided to join us? And did you realize that it would lead to something that would be your passion?
Well, I I had no clue that it was going to lead to that, but I um I remember I didn't know what to expect about the solar eclipse at all. But when it started happening, um, seeing the path, you can see where the moon was and where the sun was, and slowly coming down, you can tell that it was about to happen. And well, when it's happening, it's sort of I don't know. You can't really speak. You can't. It's hard to explain. It's something that it just it takes over. Everything.
I
Everything seems like it sort of stops.
Right. I know because I remember the first time I saw the eclipse. This was in Oregon, and I remember I used to think, when Mark would do the solar eclipse, there are these crazy people chasing the eclipse. You've seen one, you've seen them all.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like a drug.
Mm-hmm.
You want to see another one again
Makes
because it's
sense.
absolutely fascinating. It gives you a multi dimension of what life is all about, life, and then the end of life, and then the beginning of life. So the sun is out, everything is normal, and then suddenly the sun is eclipsed by the moon. So it's an end of a day, it's an end of your life. And then when the sun comes back again, your whole life starts again. So you're starting with a fresh slate again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very, for me, it's a very mystical experience. It's a rebirth.
Yeah, I can see that. It's a very, very interesting experience. I mean, that's why, ancient people, when
Yes.
they see that, I can totally understand. Now that I've seen it in person, if I had no clue about physics, astronomy, anything, then I'd freak out.
You
The
would.
the sun is gone.
Yeah.
There's a huge hole in the air, a ring that you can't.
Hmm.
It's just in the air, and it's pretty scary.
I have prepared some questions because, of course, my memory is not that great, but I'm going to ask you a few questions. So it was your father who really inspired you when it came to astronomy, right?
I would say, yeah, in a way he did.
So how did videography and photography come into play in all of this? How did that become another passion of yours? And you, how did you manage to mingle the two together?
Well, it sort of started when I was in high school. It kind of just happened because when I was in middle school, I played a lot of video games. So um, when I was going into high school, they offered this media arts program, and I think I was promised that I'd learn how to make a video game or something. And turns out all throughout all 4 years of high school, I ended up learning how to animate, edit, film, act, um, uh, some other stuff, and that sort of, I don't know, it was a skill that I had. So, and then when I started working with A Classic Tours, it just happened to perfectly match up. So, why not?
I know you. We had a conversation before this, and I asked you, "Do you believe in God? Do you believe in something in spirits?" And you said, "Not really." And for me, I feel it was divine intervention that brought you to us and us to you, so we could take it to the next level. That's how I look at it. It's very magical. It's like a Pandora's box.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I don't, because I don't know. I mean, I I went to school for physics. I didn't, and the more you go through it, the more you realize it's so much out there. It's hard to comprehend, and it makes sense why we're going on expeditions just to try to understand something like the solar eclipse, just to put an explanation behind it. But then, since I don't know everything and everything seems so immense, I'm not saying there can't be
Mhm.
a higher power. And I'm
Right.
not gonna say it's a certain higher power. I'm not gonna say it's something else. But for now, I'm just in
Yeah.
and enjoying. So
You
I
sh-
don't disagree with you. It could
no,
have totally been a divine intervention that brought me.
it could be what you think it to be.
Hmm.
There's no right or wrong in all of this, right?
Hmm.
But I know you say your father played a big role. Was there anybody else who's played a role in this, who's fueled your passion? Because I know your father is no more here. But do you feel him from the other side nudging you on?
I maybe that could also be the other divine intervention. I don't know. It could have been my dad that pushed me toward you guys or something. But that I don't know. It's a it's an interesting question.
It is. So he's mainly the main reason how you got into astronomy and just him alone, right?
Mostly, I would say he was the first like that got my interest peaked.
Mm-hmm.
But then I would consider other science like astronomers and physicists as my other idols of mine. I have a big picture of Albert Einstein in my bedroom,
He's my
and
hero.
and my girlfriend hates it because it's kind of like in negative. So he's like black and white, and it's a little creepy.
Uh-huh.
I understand it, but
Mm-hmm.
she always asks me, "Am I gonna keep that photo when we move out?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's a of course."
By the way, I love your T-shirt. So that's very apt.
Mm,
Eclipse is now in your DNA.
yeah,
Wouldn't you
I've
say
seen
so?
it. Okay, yeah,
Yeah. But I want
can.
to ask you, Kevin, when you were, I remember when Mark sat down with you last year talking about how he was putting the trip together and he was going to do an inspection trip prior to the group getting there. And then he asked you to accompany him.
Hmm.
What were your thoughts? What were your feelings? What was the process?
Well, first I was excited to go to Chile because that's where the eclipse was. Second, I was scared because I haven't really traveled that far, and especially to South America, it's another continent. Um, technically, I guess it's connected. But when we went, it was a really great experience because there's a lot of planning that has to go into planning a trip for people to see the solar eclipse. And the way it was planned and everything, all the steps, the transportation, the stays, the hotels, the actual eclipse site, making sure that the weather is okay, making sure that that from the site that there's no mountains or any buildings that can be in your view, because it's not all the time that the solar eclipse is directly above you. It can be, all over the sky when it happens to meet up. And so, but the thing is that data, knowing exactly where the eclipse is, that's known. That's what astronomers do. They can calculate exactly it's going to be here at this time, the exact coordinates. They'll give you the exact seconds even that it's going to start to meet, that it's going to be in totality, that you're going to see a diamond ring. And so using that information, me and Mark, we were able to go to the sites, make sure that the area was completely visible, that people were going to have a nice open space to set up their equipment, because people are going to be doing research, as well as just, amateur photographers and just people sitting down and enjoying it, because it's really, I recommend doing that too. I think I'm going to do that eventually.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a lot of interesting pre-planning that goes into it to make it come out as good as it did. It was.
When you were at the spot with Mark and you were checking out the site, right, looking for clarity, right, to ensure that the eclipse would be 100%, what kind of guidelines did you give Mark based on your knowledge as far as astronomy is concerned?
Well, I think mostly I was worried about the weather, making sure that there was not going to be any clouds. And then he reassured me that beforehand. Usually on the other trips that they've done before, it's they use historical weather data,
right,
to make a prediction, and usually that's pretty accurate. And I know that a classic tour has a pretty clean record of always being able to see the eclipse.
right.
And so that's something worrying, but that's taken care of. And another thing would be like I said before, making sure that the view that you have, there's nothing in the way.
Okay.
And another issue would be like too many other people, in a way. Like there can be too many lights or too many things that can ruin. Sometimes it can add to a lot of a view, but that sort of thing is
Okay. And how did you feel when you were at the summit, when you were standing there on that plateau, before the event actually took place, before the people came? How did you feel at that time when you were on your inspection trip? Was it the same feeling you had when you arrived the second time with the group?
No, it wasn't. I think that I wasn't as excited before that, and then when we were standing there, I started to realize, wow, it's going to be here and it's going to look incredible. And then when it actually happened, when the second time around that I went, it's hard to really explain. It's everything sort of changes for that moment. It's a nice 2 hour, around 2-ish hour gap from beginning to end, but the totality part is usually like a minute to 2.5 minutes. Not too long, but enough time to really enjoy it.
You talked about a couple of technical things, totality, diamond ring. Can you just go a little bit into it so so that I can understand, and then people can understand what you're talking about?
Okay. So the the solar eclipse can be classified in stages
Mm-hmm.
because it's a 2 hour process, I guess you can call it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when the sun is starts to touch the moon in your view,
Yes.
that's when the eclipse begins. And once it is fully covered,
Mm-hmm.
you'll see a black looking hole. That's totality. And it
Okay.
only lasts about not like a minute, 2 minutes. Then the diamond ring would be happens before and after.
Mm-hmm.
Right before full totality, you'll see a glimmer of the sun peeking out before it gets fully covered, and it sort of looks like the diamond on the ring.
Okay.
And it's a nice, it shines and it looks really bright. And those pictures are really, really nice.
They're really beautiful.
Yeah. So that would be what's called the diamond ring. There's
Okay.
other things like while that's happening, you can see Bailey's beads, which are some strobes of light that
Mm-hmm.
were named by a scientist,
Right.
and just more stuff.
So the other planets, while the eclipse is happening, other planets are in orbit still, right? Is
Yeah,
that what
yeah, yeah.
they're they're still doing what they're supposed to be doing?
Yeah. It just happens that the moon is tidally locked to the Earth, so we're always spinning with each other,
Right.
and it happens that at that moment the moon is going to perfectly pass in front of the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's going on normally. Nothing stops. Everything's
Oh.
Mars is still being Mars and Mars land. Everything still is going on.
When you came back, what thoughts went through your mind when you started preparing for the actual trip? Your thoughts, your emotions, your what you're going to take, equipment. Did it change the way you were thinking?
Oh yeah, because well, I saw the site beforehand, so um, I wanted to make sure I had a good tripod
Mm-hmm.
to be stable. It's like Atacama Desert, so it's like super dry area. So and there's a mine, so I knew there was gonna be like a lot of gravel.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted a nice tripod to have a steady camera. I bought an extra camera so I could film other things as well as also the solar eclipse. Um, I had to buy filters because while the solar eclipse is happening, you can really damage your eyes if you look straight into it. Not during totality, but while the moon is passing directly in front of the sun, it can you if you look at it directly with your eyes, it will damage.
So the whole experience must have been phenomenal for you.
Yeah. It was interesting because I was with where I was taking the shot of the eclipse
Mm-hmm.
was on a separate higher little plateau with Professor Jay Pasikoff,
Mm-hmm.
and his team was there, and there was a couple other people with their telescopes and cameras, and that's where I set up because the J students offered me some help with setting up my cameras and my settings because this was my first time. I had no clue what I was doing. I just researched online and see what happens. And these guys decided to help me. And when I was there, I was listening to Jay and his team and all that they were going through was incredible. Like they even sometimes during the eclipse, the there are these things called shadow bands that are caused by the sunlight sort of causing a shadow through the
Mm-hmm.
air. The air causes a shadow.
Can you go a little bit more into those details? Because I know I saw them, but I didn't understand it.
I wish I could because that was the first time I've ever seen that. I had no clue that
Yeah,
happens. And apparently that's a rare thing.
it is.
And it's very difficult to see. A lot of times for people to see that they have to lay down a white sheet, a clear white sheet, bright
Right.
white, so that you can clearly see shadows. But the that day the shadows were so
Strong.
intense that
Yeah.
everything was just going through the entire
The ground.
the ground. Everybody was seeing them. It was like watching a bunch of shadowy snakes going through the
Yes.
ground.
Yeah. So that must have been and your first eclipse.
Yeah.
And then to see shadow bands.
Yeah, and it was cool knowing that all these scientists were also very excited that they were so prominent and visible.
Can you tell me more about what happened in that vicinity with the scientists? What were the conversations that took place? Did you participate in those conversations?
Yeah, there was a lot of since they knew that it was my first time, they were very helpful, and they told me, you know, what exactly was happening at that time. The astronomer in charge of the telescope, I think it's in Australia or New Zealand. I'm not sure. He was part of Jay's team, and he was really helpful. He told me everything. He told me that the shadow bands could possibly come, and as soon as he said that, they just started coming. He was like, "Oh my god!" I was with the students. They helped me. I was watching them code their telescopes.
Oh, wow.
Because nowadays you can have an electric, telescope, so it can track the motion of the sun and the moon, because it's, you know, it's in motion.
Right.
Everything is moving.
Yes.
And like I had to manually point, take shots, and then slowly move it, eventually slowly move it, eventually slowly move it, eventually slowly move it. They had cameras that were perfectly tracking the full motion and keeping it in center, because they were doing research
Right.
on the outer layers of the sun.
So what was the difference between, you're talking about the equipment, which really piqued my interest. What was the difference between their equipment and yours?
I just had they had automatic things. They had huge telescopes that were a lot more powerful than my camera. They had several cameras that were taking shots at certain intervals. They had computers that were tracking everything and making sure that everything's working fine, as well as they were monitoring their code and watching it happen. And so for me, it was just, you know, point and shoot, point and shoot, point and shoot. But the settings and stuff were all the same, but their pictures were a lot more accurate than mine.
I guess we're going to have to change your equipment, Kevin.
Yeah.
This is not going to do.
Scientific equipment.
Yes, it would be fun if you did a group with amateur scientists with you. Just fun stuff, nothing too serious. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it'd be good. But to be honest, the pictures and the videos that I was able to get were
They were
pretty
perfect.
great. Yeah.
Yeah. You did a phenomenal job with the videos. We watched it today. And
Thank you.
To please Mark is very, very hard. It's next to impossible. And you did a fantastic job, Kevin.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You did a great job.
It was an interesting project.
Yes. So how do you look at your next project next year?
Oh, I need to buy a lot of things. I need a drone to capture the site. I need to see the site. I need to know what we're gonna do.
So I guess you're going on the inspection trip with Mark again?
I don't know. Hopefully.
You should sit down and talk to him.
Yeah, and what else? I'll also need to buy. I might have to ask somebody for help.
Yeah, you're going to need help there. But I want to ask you, Kevin, where do you see yourself with all of this? Because it's opened up a whole new world for you. It's showing you that there's another opportunity here, right?
Yeah.
Another form of business that you could develop.
Yeah,
How do you plan to do it in conjunction with the Classic Tours collection?
I plan on. Well, I have Dosed Productions. This is my video company, and right now I focus mainly on doing legal work,
Right.
which is a whole nother topic.
Yes.
And I happen to have training that I'm not using, and I'm finally using now with the solar eclipse. So I think in the future we'll probably do more astronomy based trips and videos and stuff like that. And I'm thinking other scientific expeditions. Maybe go to Antarctica and drill some ice with people.
Yeah. No, there's so much you can do as
Yeah.
far as tourism is concerned.
Maybe look
And
for some dinosaur bones with
you could.
paleontologists.
Hey, Kevin, you need to start searching the world now to see what's out there.
Yeah.
With this climate change, so many strange things are happening now. Because I remember watching a program where they were saying in England, they're starting to see, maybe it's because of global warming, they're seeing strange animals that they've never, mammals, water animals, they've never seen before. So who
Hmm.
knows where your adventures will take you, right?
Yeah.
I have a few more questions. Well, you're bonding with the students. Um, when you bonded with them, when you talked to them, do you have any funny anecdotes to tell about them? Do you have any funny stories to tell during your travels through,
Hmm.
the solar eclipse? Remember the drive back to the hotel? It was so long. It was
Hmm.
what, 4 hours?
Hmm.
We should have taken about half an hour or 1 hour or something like that. How did you feel about the drive back? Were you frustrated, or the eclipse was so overpowering that the drive didn't matter to you, did it?
No, it didn't matter to me at all. It was a great experience because, if anything, the whole drive back was part of it because all those people, all that traffic was people who were interested in the solar eclipse, and it was interesting seeing people in their motorcycles with a backpack with a you could see a telescope hanging out the back, or like a whole bus like broken down on the side full of people who were watching the eclipse, but now they're stuck. But it was interesting. All those people were all there for the eclipse.
Kevin, I want to thank you so much for joining me at Travel Talks with Debika. It's been such a pleasure having you here.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure being here.
Thank you. I would like to say that this has been such an interesting episode with Kevin, talking about the galaxies and the solar eclipse, something I have experienced twice. My father, I remember when I was young, he used to talk about it, but I never really comprehended the immensity as far as the solar system was concerned. And he always talked about the possibility of life in one of the planets. Maybe one day Kevin will discover life and he may be living in Mars. Who knows? Thank you for
Definitely.
joining me.